It would seem that all the voter fraud talk is nothing but a PR stunt by the Republicans. If they were serious about the integrity of elections, they would have long ago addressed the real problem, which is election fraud. The reason that they do not want a full investigation is that it would nail many prominent Republicans.
When you think of election fraud, remember 2000 and 2004, please. These people have shown no respect for actual democracy. The idea of a free and fair vote scares them. Why? They can't win without cheating. Republicans got sick of losing in 92 and 96, so in 2000 enter car rove and voter suppression, the act of caging, rewriting computer software, throwing out ballots, discarding military absentee ballots, challenging voters at their polling places, under-equipping polling places, purging legal voters off voter rolls, and good old voter intimidation.
In the fall of 2001, after an 8-month review of 175,000 Florida ballots never counted in the 2000 election, an analysis by the National Opinion Research Center confirmed that Al Gore actually won Florida and should have been president.
When it comes to the 2004 election, we are told that Bush won Ohio by 51 to 48%, but statewide results were not matched by the court-supervised hand count, which revealed that Kerry received 54% of the vote.
More importantly, national exit polls showed Kerry winning in 2004. However, it was only in precincts where there were no paper trails on the voting machines that the exit polls ended up being different from the final count. According to Dr. Steve Friedman, a statistician at the University of Pennsylvania, the odds are 250 million to 1 that the exit polls were wrong by chance. In fact, where the exit polls disagreed with the computerized outcomes, the results always favored Bush, another statistical impossibility.
Tens of thousands of eligible voters in at least 6 swing states have been removed from the rolls, or have been blocked from registering in ways that appear to violate federal law. These 6 swing states are in violation of federal law in 2 ways. Michigan and Colorado are removing voters from the rolls within 90 days of a federal election, which is not allowed except when voters die. Notify the authorities that they have moved out of state or have been declared unfit to vote. Indiana, Nevada, North Carolina, and Ohio seem to be improperly using Social Security data to verify registration applications for new voters. In addition to the 6 swing states, 3 more states appear to be violating federal law. Alabama and Georgia seem to be improperly using Social Security information to screen registration applications from new voters. And Louisiana appears to have removed thousands of voters after the federal deadline for taking such action.
Under federal law, election officials are supposed to use the Social Security database to check a registration application only as a last resort if no record of the applicant is found on state databases, like those for driver's licenses or identification cards. The requirement exists because using the Social Security database is less reliable than the state lists, and is more likely to incorrectly flag applications as invalid. Many state officials seem to be using the Social Security list first. The data seem to represent a violation of federal law in the contract the states signed with the agency to use the database. Last week, after the inquiry by The Times, Michael J. Astrue, the Commissioner of the Social Security Administration, alerted the Justice Department to the problem and sent letters to election officials in Alabama, Georgia, Indiana, Nevada, North Carolina and Ohio. The letters asked the officials to ensure that they are complying with federal law. It is absolutely essential that people entitled to register to vote are allowed to do so, Mr. Astrue said in a press release. In 3 states, Colorado, Louisiana, and Michigan, the number of people purged from the election rolls since August 1st far exceeds the number who may have died or relocated during that period. States may be improperly removing voters who have moved within the state, election experts said, or who are considered inactive, because they have failed to vote in 2 consecutive federal elections. For example, major voter registration drives have been held this year in Colorado, which has also had a significant population increase since the last presidential election, but the state has recorded a net loss of nearly 100,000 voters from its rolls since 2004. In Michigan, some 33,000 voters were removed from the rolls in August. In Colorado, some 37,000 people were removed from the rolls in the 3 weeks after July 21st. In Louisiana, at least 18,000 people were dropped from the voting rolls.
By using the Social Security database so extensively, states are flagging extra registrations and creating extra work for local officials who were already struggling to process all the registration applications by Election Day. I simply don't have the staff to keep up, said Ann McFall, the supervisor of elections in Volusia County, Florida. It takes 10 minutes to process a normal registration and up to a week to deal with a flagged one, said Ms. McFall, a Republican, adding that she was receiving 100 or so flagged registrations a week. Usually, when state election officials check a registration and find that it does not match a database entry, they alert local election officials to contact the voter and request further proof of identification. If that is not possible, most states flag the voter file and require identification from the voter at the polling place. In Florida, Iowa, Louisiana, and South Dakota, the problem is more serious because voters are not added to the rolls until the states remove the flags. Ms. McFall said she was angry to learn from the state recently that it was her responsibility to contact each flag voter to clear up the discrepancies before Election Day. This situation with voter registrations is going to land us in court, she said. In fact, it already has. In Michigan and Florida, voter rights groups are suing state officials, accusing them of being too aggressive in purging voter rolls and of preventing people from registering.
The reason that the likes of Rush Limbaugh are claiming that there will be massive voter fraud is so that Talking Heads himself can delegitimize the coming election. When you hear people talk about voter fraud, you need to know that it is so rare that it could never affect an election's result. Sadly, the same cannot be said about election fraud. We know for a fact that Al Gore was the rightful winner in 2000, and many believe that Kerry actually won in 2004. If Republicans really want to question the legitimacy of the 2008 election, then I say, let's have a full investigation starting with the election of 2000. Such an investigation will reveal just how rare voter fraud actually is. For example, the League of Women Voters of Ohio found that out of about 9 million votes cast, there were only 4 fraudulent ballots. I do not think anyone will mind seeing such criminals being prosecuted along with those responsible for the disenfranchisement of hundreds of thousands of legal voters.
All the talk about Acorn and voter fraud is in itself a fraud. That is not to say that there might be a few registered that should not be, but as we saw in Ohio, out of 9 million votes cast, there were only 4 fraudulent ballots. Nationwide, there has only been about 24 convictions, which indicates that this is a minor problem. We must not allow those with weak morals to twist the facts. Here are the facts. Acorn verifies the legitimacy of every registration its canvassers collect. If they can't authenticate the registration, or it's incomplete or questionable in other ways, they flag that form as problematic, fraudulent, incomplete, etc. They then hand in all registration forms, even the problematic ones, to elections officials, as they are required to do by law. In almost every case where you've heard about fraud by Acorn, it's because Acorn itself notified officials about the fraud that's been perpetrated on them by rogue canvassers. Most officials who run to the media screaming Acorn is committing fraud know all of the above, but don't bother to share those facts with the media they run to. None of this is about voter fraud. None of it. Where any fraud has occurred, it's voter registration fraud and has resulted in exactly 0 fraudulent votes.
There's only one reason for this dishonesty by the Republicans. They know they are going to lose and lose big, so they want something which they can use to delegitimize the win by the Democratic Party. They want to promote this lie about voter fraud using the conservative media to claim that there really is no need for change, and the only hope for change will come by all of us demanding that our new Democratic supermajority investigates everything. We must insist that all voter suppression, caging, rewriting of computer software, throwing out of ballots, discharging military absentee ballots, challenging voters at the voting places, under-equipping these voting places, purging legal voters from the voting rolls, and voter intimidation be investigated and prosecuted to the full measure of the law.